Hello again, guys. I am going to discuss, as you can see, why science denies and will always deny the occult, unless something truly monumentally, existentially glamorous happens, or significant to say the least. Before I continue, the article associated with this topic is, as always, linked in the description of this video. So yeah, let's have a quick powwow and or discussion. It's no secret. Scientists, they don't believe in anything relating to religion and or the occult, spirituality, nothing. And that will always be the case. Before I continue, to practitioners of the occult, you guys are already familiar with what I'm about to say, which is that it's not a surprise considering the fact that within given context, zodiacally, the occult is ruled by Pisces, as in full-blown spirit summoning, anything ethereal, anything that has to do with the intangible is Piscean territory, simply put. And obviously, Pisces opposes Virgo. And within this context, what does Virgo deal with as well as overall? Well, medicine for one, material, physical illnesses as opposed to Piscean territory, which is mental illnesses. So these two oppose each other. Plain and simply put, scientists are represented by the zodiac sign Virgo and occultists by the zodiac sign Pisces. And since these two oppose each other, you see that, hey, they don't mix, nor will they ever, until or unless God wills otherwise, just like everything. But yeah, simply put, in society, throughout mankind's history, it doesn't matter, you know, how far back we go or similar, etc., etc. By default, science has always been about purely the material. And the reason that you, for example, see that the world is more materially inclined, so people lean more towards science, is simply due to propaganda. Any person for the past generation that has been well informed, as in you keep track of global events and whatnot, has noticed that, for example, especially in Western culture, there has been a heavy emphasis in the past century or two laid on materialism, and adversely, there has been an outright denial. Anything from scientists just outright coming up with all kinds of, regardless of whether they're legitimate or not, or the extent to which they are legitimate or not. Point is that they always badmouth the occult, anything relating to the spiritual as superstitious bullshit, mumbo jumbo, blah blah blah, etc., etc., etc. And you can clearly tell how biased they are, as in, it doesn't matter how irrefutably proven something is, they just are like, yeah, hogwash, humbug, blah, blah, blah. And as a result, obviously, people that just go along with the trend, they also have the same modus operandi in the way of thinking. And people are like, yeah, it's superstitious nonsense, blah, 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 blah. They simply spin that narrative, and it doesn't matter whether by publishing researches, and it doesn't matter whether a research is correct or not, whether it's fully legitimate or not, etc. These guys will go so far as to um, for example, specifically seek out quacks and scammers, guys that aren't legit, quite the opposite, and use these people as a staging ground for simply showcasing the world as in see, these guys are full of shit, so everyone that even remotely like believes this nonsense is also full of shit. You see for yourself, blah 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 blah. Blah. They simply it's just an overall smear campaign, if you will, against the occult. Now, practitioners obviously know that the occult is fully legitimate, regardless of how many unfortunately rotten eggs and or bad apples you have also within this industry and within this world overall. So I completely understand what the average person is getting at. Obviously, within that context, I fully side with the average person. But at the same time, specifically pertaining to this subject, obviously it's nonsense. For as is written, it is from the immaterial that the material comes forth and not the other way around. So all of us know this. So including modern medicine and everything, everything material you see literally comes from higher up, from the immaterial, you know, no differently than, for example, water running through a pitcher and it ending up in a bucket. What you see in the bucket comes from where the water originally comes from, plain and simple. But of course, again, you can compare a scientist to someone that, for example, someone that comes from any country in the world. For example, someone that comes from Denmark, and we live in a world in which the person has never been to the Middle East. And as a result, if you told a person that, hey, there is a place in the world where it's nothing like giant deserts, we're talking about nothing but sand, my guy, and it's like nothing. Then, they're going to be like, yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, you have one hell of an imagination. The person will go so far as to stake their lives on it. Back in the day before maps and everything, and people only lived in their own world, as in, you know, this is all there is to it, that's exactly what they believe. They were like, oh, this is all there is to it. As in, the entire world is purely comprised of my geographical environment. And of course, in hindsight, later on, they discovered they were wrong, as in, oh boy, how wrong were we? Ugh. And they started seeing things such as animals that are, by present day standards, normal to us. Imagine what it's like never having seen a lion and then you see a lion for the first time. You're like, what the hell is that thing? What kind of weird monster is that? Yeah, and it just goes on. And some myths come from this, for example, like a chimera comes from it, apparently, obviously, since a chimera is like a fusion of a lion and a snake for a tail, and Greek mythology, quote unquote bullshit. Not literally, but in a manner of speaking, cheekily referred to. But see my point? That's exactly what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that superstitiousness doesn't exist. It does, but that has nothing to do with this subject. This is how you can compare a scientist, someone that has never set foot out of their own country, and they're like, oh, okay, so yeah, I live in Denmark, so this is all there is to it, literally. This is what the entire world looks like. There is nothing else in the world, and you can't convince me otherwise. Stubbornness, pigheadedness, and ignorancy are powerful tools, believe me, you know, as in they keep someone mentally imprisoned. And you cannot convince these people otherwise. The same way that convince you cannot convince someone like that they're in trouble, even if their ass is literally and figuratively speaking on fire. You can't convince them otherwise. Um, because the aforementioned factors breed stubbornness and whatnot, outright breeds something idiocy. And as the saying goes, you can't argue with a fool, nor should you, otherwise you're also a fool. And I fully side with that within the context of this subject. So that's also why I really don't care. I am not me being who I am. I know better, so I don't care. I don't care if a scientist watches my videos and he thinks I'm full of shit, I'm a quack, I'm this, I'm that. I don't care because your opinion of me is utterly worthless, meaningless, and every kind of lust there is. The same way that the sun exists regardless of who thinks what, the sun, bluntly put, does not give one shit or flaming fuck whether you believe in it, whether you ever believed in it, or whether you will ever believe in it, or its effect it has on the world. It has its effect on the world regardless of what any other element or factor in this world thinks of it. That's it. Okay? But that's also why you see that these guys can't help you. Just like I mentioned in earlier content, honestly, that you'll find in the article, an article and a video I did a while ago, like I think a year or so ago, why science can't help you with if you're mentally ill. Because again, that's I'm not going to repeat myself. You can watch that, you can read and watch that content, but shortly summarize, that's why these guys can help you, and they can't do anything. Just like politicians, they'll come up with some cockamamie explanation. But long story short, it's just like, oh, sorry, we can't help you. Scratching our heads as in, hey, I have someone that's severely mentally disturbed. The person is seriously mentally ill. The person behaves erratically. They can't help you. They're just going to plunk you full of drugs and throw you in a hole, so to speak, in an asylum, and that's it. As in, oh, okay, you're no longer fit for society, and that's it. And then if you tell these guys, okay, listen, you can help someone that has cancer, for example, in a logical, straightforward manner. Why can't you help this person? They're gonna come up with a bunch of stupid excuses, and if you keep asking detailed questions, as in, no, but listen, that doesn't make sense, then you're going to see them get annoyed, and they're gonna look at you and just sigh. I'm sorry, we can't give you any more information. That is all. Goodbye. And that's it. They can't do anything. And then if you, for example, try to attack them and you're like, you guys are a bunch of idiots. You claim to be like these hypothetically all-knowing individuals and you claim to be able to heal any disease. Well, I have someone here with a legitimate disease and you can't help the person. Why? Because it's of an intangible nature. And the person is simply going to not be able to say anything. No comment, no comment, no, we're not available for comment, and that's all there is to it. Because again, I already said, these guys, they purely operate in a world where there are multiple colors in a black and white manner. By their logic, there are only two colors, white and black. They vehemently refuse the existence of any other colors, proverbially speaking. And yeah, if you do so, then you can imagine how much you're limiting and or restricting yourself by doing so. But that's the reason why these guys are the way they are and why that's not going to change. Bye bye.